You won't believe the day I caught my HOA neighbor, Karen, sneaking around my backyard like a thief in the night. But here's the kicker. She wasn't after my house, my truck, or even my tools. No, she had her sights set on my shed, and that one mistake started a war she never saw coming. It all began on a quiet Saturday morning. I was sipping coffee on the porch, enjoying the only day I had off that week, when I noticed movement out by the fence. At first I thought it was just a squirrel, or maybe the wind kicking up the leaves, but then I saw her, Karen, the self-proclaimed president of our HOA, crouched low like some bargain bin ninja, creeping toward my shed. Now, I should mention, this wasn't the first time she had been a problem. Karen had complained about my lawn height, the color of my mailbox, and even the way I parked my truck in my own driveway. But sneaking into my backyard? That was a whole new level of crazy. I set my coffee down, grabbed my phone, and started recording. Sure enough, she fiddled with the lock on the shed, muttering something about community standards and how she was going to inspect it for violations. You believe that? Inspecting my shed, as if she had any authority to step foot on my property. My first instinct was to march down there and catch her red-handed, but a wicked little idea popped into my head instead. If Karen wanted to break into my shed so badly, maybe I should give her something worth finding, something that would make her think twice before ever setting foot in my yard again. So later that afternoon, I got to work. I went to the dollar store, bought bags of cheap balloons, and spent hours filling them with air until the shed was practically bursting at the seams. But that was just the first layer. For the second, I cooked up a batch of harmless but very messy paint bombs using balloons filled with non-toxic paint. I rigged the whole thing with a simple mechanism so the second she forced the door, it would explode in a colorful storm. And let me tell you, I didn't have to wait long for the show. The night Karen chose to strike was humid and still, the kind of night when every creak sounded louder. I set my camera in the garage, angled so it could see the shed door without being obvious. I sat in the living room with a beer and pretended to read, but I listened. Every footstep, every rustle near the fence. Around midnight, a soft scuff split the quiet, then the slow scrape of fabric against wood. Karen moved with the same rehearsed stealth she always used when she thought no one watched, precise and officious. Like a woman with a checklist, she came to the shed, crouched, and ran her fingers along the lock. I watched her face on the feed. Lips pursed, jaw tight, eyes narrowed in that self-righteous fury. She produced a slim pair of bolt cutters from her tote. Classic Karen, prepared and dramatic. She pried at the lock. The metal groaned. When the hasp gave, you could see the victory in her posture, like she'd planted a flag on someone else's property. That's when I pulled the release. A quiet tug on the string I'd threaded through. The frame sent a cascade of balloons tumbling. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then one balloon brushed the threshold and popped. A tiny bang followed by a deluge of color. Paint balloons burst like confetti, blotting the shed door, Karen's jacket, and the grass with splashes of blue, pink, and yellow. The sight looked less like a trap and more like a chaotic art piece. Paint streaked down her face. For the first time since I'd moved in, Karen was speechless. She stumbled backward, trying to brush the mess from her clothes, but it only spread. Balloons popped underfoot, leaving neon footprints as she scrambled. Her bolt cutters clattered to the ground, forgotten. Lights came on across the street as neighbors peered outside. Instead of running, Karen glared up at the shed, eyes wide and furious in an almost human way. She raised a trembling hand toward my property, as if accusing the sky. I opened the garage and stepped outside, camera still rolling, heart pounding. "What did you do?" she sputtered, paint dripping from her lashes. Her voice was part outrage, part sob. I could have called the police, pressed charges, or let her stew. Instead, I offered a calm smile and a single sentence that would haunt her. HOA meetings for months to come. I stepped closer, letting the camera capture every dripping inch, and told her, "This is private property, stay off it, or next time it won't be paint you worry about." By morning, everyone in the neighborhood knew. Karen's midnight paint bath was the kind of spectacle you couldn't keep quiet. The street buzzed with whispers, laughter, and a few not-so-subtle smirks when Karen stomped past, still scrubbing at the blue tint that stained her hairline. Even after showering, she looked like a walking art project. But Karen wasn't the type to crawl away in shame. No, she doubled down. The very next afternoon, I found a folded notice taped to my front door. It had the HOA letterhead she loved to flaunt, though I suspected she printed it herself. In bold letters, it accused me of property defacement and community vandalism. Imagine that the woman who broke into my shed was now accusing me of vandalizing her. I chuckled, snapped a photo, and tossed the letter into the trash. Still, I wasn't stupid. Karen wasn't just humiliated. She was cornered. And people like her lash out harder when they feel trapped. Sure enough, 2 nights later, she tried again. This time, she came armed not with bolt cutters but with backup. Her smug brother-in-law, Todd, a tall guy with a beer belly and an attitude. Todd strutted into my yard like he owned the place. Karen whispered furiously at him, pointing to the shed as if unveiling some great crime scene. From my window I could hear her. He thinks he's clever. Todd, but we'll show him. That shed isn't safe. It's against regulations. Todd grunted and grabbed the shed handle. My camera was rolling, and this time I had upgraded the trap. The paint bombs had been good for laughs, but now I'd layered in something even more humiliating. Harmless, but unforgettable. I had filled a set of balloons with flour and glitter, rigged on a simple pulley. The moment the door was yanked hard, the buckets tipped. Todd yanked. The trap sprang. Flour exploded in a choking cloud, coating his hair and face, while glitter clung to every surface like it had been fired from a cannon. His black shirt turned gray. His jeans sparkled like a disco ball. And the look on his face, pure betrayal. He coughed, staggered, then sneezed so hard the glitter puffed into the night air again. Karen shrieked, trying to brush him off, but the more she touched him, the shinier she became. It was like watching 2 villains in a cartoon slip on banana peels in slow motion. And just when I thought it couldn't get any better, 2 squad cars rolled up. Someone had called the cops. Red and blue lights flickered across my lawn, bathing the shed in a glow more dramatic than I could have staged myself. Karen froze mid-swipe, her glittery hands hovering over Todd's flour-drenched shoulders. For the first time in all our encounters, her sharp tongue fell silent. The first officer stepped out, flashlight in hand, his face already tightening as he took in the scene. "Ma'am, sir, care to explain why you're breaking into this man's shed at midnight?" His tone had that blend of boredom and authority, the kind you hear when someone already knows the answer. Karen shot upright, chin high, even with blue paint still faintly streaking her cheek from the first incident. "Officer, this is a matter of community safety. That shed is a violation of HOA codes, and as president, it's my responsibility to enforce the rules." The officer raised a brow, then glanced at me standing calmly with my phone in hand. "Sir, you got this on camera?" "Oh, every second," I said, holding up my phone. "From the bolt cutters last week to tonight's little encore." Karen's face twisted, but Todd coughed out flour and muttered, "Karen, let's just go." But Karen wasn't done. She jabbed a finger toward me, voice shrill. "He set traps! Dangerous, malicious traps! Look at us! We've been assaulted!" The second officer, who had been inspecting the shed, let out a laugh he quickly disguised as a cough. "Lady, what I see here is a private property owner defending his shed with balloons, glitter, and flour. That's hardly a deadly weapon. What I also see is attempted breaking and entering." Todd groaned, glitter sparkling on his beard like Christmas lights. Karen's defiance flickered, but she still tried to argue. "You don't understand. I run this neighborhood." "No," the officer cut in. "You run your mouth. Big difference." The words hit like a gavel. The cops wrote up a trespass warning on the spot, handing Karen and Todd papers that banned them from setting foot on my property again. If they did, it would be automatic arrest. Karen's face turned pale as the officers explained how the video would also be logged, solid evidence if she ever tried again. When the squad cars pulled away, Karen stood trembling at the edge of the street. For once, she didn't have a speech. She only muttered something under her breath and stormed off, Todd trailing behind like a disco ball ghost. From that night on, my shed remained untouched. Neighbors stopped me with knowing smiles, whispering, "Nice job," as they passed. Karen? She never mentioned it again at HOA meetings. Her authority had been drenched in paint, dusted with flour, and buried under glitter. And me, I finally enjoyed my backyard in peace. Because sometimes the best way to deal with a Karen is to let them trap themselves. If you enjoyed this wild HOA showdown, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any crazy stories like this. Drop a comment below and tell me what you would have done if Karen tried to break into your shed. And don't forget to like this video if you love seeing epic payback moments. It really helps support the channel.